attention, please. It's time for the final countdown. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Well, good evening, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode of the Fireplace Show. And what's the Fireplace Show? The Fireplace Show is our broadcast sponsored by the CVC Success Group. We are a group of coaches, consultants, and trainers that serve the chimney, the venting, and the hearth industries. And our goal in this show is to share with you information that will be helpful to you as a consumer. We try to base our information for the understanding of the consumer and help you understand about the fireplace in your home, the wood stove in your home, the chimney. Perhaps you've had chimney issues, and hopefully we can address some of those. So you'll know we do not provide services for homeowners. We work for the industry as trainers, as consultants. So as we go through tonight's episode, tonight we're going to be talking about something that could go by various names. It's something that many of today's homeowners have in their home, and that's what's called a factory-built fireplace. Now, a factory-built fireplace many times will be called by other names, such as it's often called a prefab fireplace. It's called a prefabricated fireplace. And another name that we often hear is a zero clearance fireplace. So tonight, my goal in this is to give you some education of what these units are, what's the issues that you can encounter, what's the maintenance issues, what could be some of the possible fire hazards, and other things that are connected with a factory-built fireplace. So quite simply, a fireplace that is classified as a factory-built, a prefab, a zero clearance, whatever we're going to call them, they're going to be a fireplace that is manufactured in a factory. And the units we're going to concentrate on tonight are going to be primarily made out of metal. They're going to be made out of steel. They may be made out of cast iron. Now, there's other types of factory-built fireplaces that are made out of masonry materials that we will address in a future episode. But what I'm going to go back through is the history of these, how they came into being, and how they became much more popular and basically took over the fireplace industry in America's homes. And I'm going to show you how this growth has happened. So stick around with us. We're going to be right back, and we'll get the show started tonight. And if you're a member of the industry, feel free to share this on your own social media to help educate the consumers in your market area. It may help you in your explanation of what the problems are that you find. So stick around. We'll be right back in just a second. So again, just like the music said, our goal here is to answer your burning questions. So you see my email address on the screen right now. And if you're a consumer, I'd like you to feel free to email me. A lot of times we do these shows, and what we do is we answer questions that consumers will send in and ask us. Again, we do not provide services for consumers. We don't sell consumers product. We don't provide service for them. That's what other people's jobs are in the industry. So we don't have a vested interest in the findings that people find in the fireplace. In fact, often we may be the company that your technician may consult with. In fact, earlier this afternoon, a gentleman that is in the chimney industry contacted me because he had run into something in the field he had never seen before. So what I'm going to do is, it's always helpful to have photos up on the screen. So I'm going to share some photos with you to help you understand tonight of what we're talking about. Let me get my screen share going here, and it'll be up in just a second, and we'll start talking about factory-built fireplaces. And again, what is a factory-built fireplace? It's a fireplace basically built in the factory. So what you're looking at right now is out of a Sears Roebuck catalog from the early part of the 20th century. Sears Roebuck at one time was one of the largest suppliers of homes across America. And what they did at Sears Roebuck is they sold house kits. They manufactured them in their Chicago, Illinois factory up there. And part of this was to ship all these products to the local building supply or to the building contractor, whoever was going to build it, possibly straight to the homeowner. So when we look at factory-built fireplaces, we actually had steel units that went into the masonry that was a fireplace, and that's where the wood or the coal in those days was burned. And you're looking at a couple examples of these that you may find in an older home that was built in the early part of the 20th century. So these particular fireplaces, what did they do? They replaced the fire brick that was in a conventional firebox and made it much easier to construct the system and have a system that did not require a skilled mason many times like a fireplace should, because there's a lot of very involved steps in building a fireplace that actually works. So instead of building a firebox, the fireplace, the burn chamber where you would place the fuel, what these Sears Craftsman's homes had in them and other fireplaces and homes around America, they had these steel inserts that were installed into a masonry housing, and then they vented through the masonry chimney. So what you're looking at is the front view, the side view with a cover on the left, and then the one to the right in the photo is showing you without the cover. And the cover was called a summer cover. What the cover was there for was to shut the fireplace up in the summertime. When you look at these units, we had a grate that was elevated. And if you look down below the opening of the firebox, you'll see there is areas with slots. And what those slots were for was to open and close and allow air to reach into the base of the fireplace. So this were the old fireplaces that you would commonly find in many parts of the country in houses built in the earlier part of the 20th century. In fact, I live in central North Carolina, and these type of fireplaces are very, very common in this market area. They're not real large. Most of them are between 20 and 30 inches wide. They're 20 to 30 inches tall, and they've only got about a 9-inch depth to 12-inch depth in most of these units. They're also called Victorian fireplaces. And the reason they're called Victorian because this is a style of fireplace that was often used in England and then came into this country. So, but again, these were used, you could burn wood or you could burn coal in them. Now, these earlier fireplaces were often the heating system for the house. I know in the town that I live in, often we would find one of these fireplaces in each room. There were often 4 to 6 of these on a chimney with separate flues serving each of these fireplaces. Now, many of these have been reconstructed. They have been brought up to code. They had the fireboxes rebuilt, the chimneys lined, and other things as we went through the advancement of chimneys and fireplaces in America. But again, this was like the starting of when we started having factory-built fireplaces. And that's going to be tonight's subject matter to kind of take you through the development of the factory-built fireplace. Well, up until a couple years later, and then what happened was in 1927, there was a company in Syracuse, New York, and the name of the company was the Chemical Toilet Company. And the Chemical Toilet Company saw a way to expand their product offerings. So what they started doing was they started producing steel firebox inserts that were much larger than the ones you just saw in the Sears Craftsman houses that was sold in the Sears kits. And these fireplaces also often had circulating tubes put into them. So what the circulating tube was doing was the circulating tubes allowed air to come in and go through those tubes that were in the fireplace. Some of them released heat into the room through vents, and you would often find these with two vents on the low part of the fireplace and two more vents higher up on the fireplace. So the lower vents were made where the air could be pulled in and pulled through the heating chambers that are also called the convective chambers. Some of these units have blowers in them to assist them. Now, from this company changed hands several times, and it became known and is known today as the Heatilator Company. Now, from this, many consumers will call any fireplace that blows air to be a Heatilator. But Heatilator is actually a brand name. This particular type of fireplace was made by many other companies over the years, and the Heatilator is one. There is also the Superior Heat Forms. Majestic made these kind of fireplaces. Vestal still makes these kind of fireplaces today. So when these fireplaces were installed, what we did, we eliminated the use of the fire brick in the firebox area. And then we had a cone shape above that, which was a funnel to funnel the smoke up into the flue system itself. Commonly, they were going to be vented through a flue system that was compatible to the size of the fireplace. And depending on the size of the unit itself, sometimes this was a flue tile that we basically called an 8x12. It could have been slightly different from that depending on the region. We also have them that vented into 13x13 flue linings, and we also had them that went into 13x18 flue linings. They made these fireplaces in a lot of sizes, but the most popular size that we found in the field is going to probably be a 36-inch wide unit, a 42-inch wide unit, and sometimes we had 48-inch wide units. But there were smaller ones and there were bigger ones than that, depending on the manufacturer and what the builder specified whenever he built the fireplace. But again, these we call these steel form fireplaces. And you may hear people commonly call them a heat form fireplace. You may hear them call a Heatilator fireplace. But again, both of those are specific brands of the steel form fireplace. Now, this is made to be installed inside of a masonry casing. In other words, those steel boxes are completely surrounded with masonry. And a lot of times, this is some of the problems that we find with these fireplaces. We don't have proper clearance to them. In fact, when I talked about someone contacted me earlier today, it was because they had a steel form fireplace that was vented through an improper chimney system. It didn't go to a clay tile line system. And then they had a lot of clearance issues into this fireplace. And this is what's commonly found. And this is why, as a consumer, you need to follow the recommendations of the National Fire Protection Association, which recommends that you have your chimney, your fireplace, your wood stove, all these systems should be inspected on an annual basis. And NFPA goes a little further. They recommend that you get a qualified person, a qualified agency to do this. They don't really recommend, but in the industry, we use a term called certified. And what you're looking for, excuse me, is a technician who has been certified as an inspector of these systems. And there's different certifications out there. I also recommend that you check a company's reviews on Google. Make sure that they have good reviews. These are testimonials to the type of service that these companies have provided for other consumers in your market area. So use those reviews as a way to make sure that you're getting the right person in, excuse me, to service in your home. Now, the photo you're looking at this point is showing you one of these steel form fireplaces that is installed, and we have the brick cut away so you can kind of take a view of this, of what's there. You can see that we have the brick surrounding the unit on all sides. We do have the one side cut out. You can see where there is an opening cut in the bottom of the fireplace on the side, on the lower side. And what that is for, that is where the air is pulled into those convection chambers to be heated. And then the upper hole is how it's expelled back into the room. What the builder does is the builder builds heat channels to duct this heat away. It should be made out of masonry where we have the air that can then be heated and blown into the room. Again, you'll often find where there is an electric fan that's cooked up to the house power that would actually be a part of how this circulates the heat into the system. Okay, so I've got a couple questions here I'm going to ask her from a friend of mine, and one of them is a young lady that I know very well. I actually see her in a meeting after a week, and she asked the question, "Hello, Mr. Isenhour, I have a question. How often should a wood-burning fireplace chimney get cleaned?" Well, Theodore, the answer to that is going to be that the chimney should be inspected on an annual basis. Now, it may not need to be cleaned. It depends on how much fuel is being consumed. In some cases, with real heavy users, we may need to clean the chimney more than once a year. Some people can go several years, maybe 2, 3, 5 years even, if they don't use the fireplace very heavily. But the key thing is you should be getting the chimney inspected. And Theodora, I see you have a second question. Is it true that starting a fire with regular magazine paper creates a film of ink on the chimney, making it difficult to scrub? Theodora, not really. What you're talking about there is creosote. Creosote will deposit on the walls of the chimney. This is the moisture that's leaving the wood, and it will condense in the chimney whenever the temperature drops below a certain point, which is going to happen in every chimney. That's what we call creosote. And creosote is something that can be cleaned depending on the buildup. Sometimes it can be cleaned with manual means. Sometimes we have to use a chemical system to actually clean that. So I appreciate your question, Theodora, and I really appreciate you being on here tonight. And I hope this is helpful to you. So again, what you're looking at is right now, you're looking at the steel form fireplace and where it's installed into a brick, a masonry housing. Now, these units were extremely popular in houses built in the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s. And Theodore, thank you very much. I was glad I could answer your questions. Anytime you know how to reach me, just reach out to me anytime that I can help you. But I appreciate you being on here tonight with me. So, but these are our heat form fireplaces. And again, the whole principle here was to replace the fire brick that's in the fireplace and also give us a fireplace that can actually produce more heat into the room is the reason that we have these type of fireplaces. If you look right past the fireplace opening, you see where there's grills mounted on front of it. The lower one says cold air intake, and then the upper one has the warm air outlet that's on us. So the air comes in, goes through those convective chambers, and then it's expelled out into the room where it heats our bodies, heats our rooms, makes it more comfortable. Now we move up into the 1950s. In the 1950s, there was a researcher that worked for the United States government and did a lot of testing. His name was Robert K. Thullman. So Mr. Thullman was very well respected in testing and in chimneys and fireplaces. In fact, he's wrote a lot of technical journals that we still utilize today. So in 1952, Mr. Thullman invented what is called the factory-built fireplace to be installed in a combustible wall into framing. Okay, that was in 1952. And when Mr. Thullman had his fireplace originally tested and listed, it was actually listed at 0 clearance to combustibles. In other words, what that meant was that wood could actually touch the fireplace. However, a couple years down the road, in 1957, UL came out, which stands for Underwriters Laboratory. That's a test lab that you'll find a tag on your lamps, on your appliances, and everything else, and said, hey, our test standard was wrong. So they sent Mr. Thullman and his son back to the drawing board, and they had to relist and test and relist all of their fireplaces. And when they did that, the newer fireplaces came out, and then they had to have clearance to these framing members. Now, since it was a 0 clearance fireplace at one time, that name stuck. and hung on. And still to this day, people will classify these fireplaces as a zero clearance fireplace, but they are not zero clearance. They are intended to have clearance, and every fireplace has its own individual clearance. And when a tested and listed product is made, such as a fireplace, it always includes an installation manual. So these clearances are posted and published in the installation manual. There is no set clearances on factory built fireplaces. The clearances will vary dependent upon what you find. And some of these manuals are very difficult to get because they're historical artifacts now. The fireplaces are no longer manufactured. So it's a very real problem of finding parts and guidance. And this is why we train our chimney technicians today, because they've got to come in and they've got to make judgment calls on what they see in your house. And they do find a lot of problems. Because many times if you call for a chimney sweep to come to your home, this may be the very first time that anyone with the education and the training to do that inspection has ever looked at the fireplace or chimney system in your home. So often problems are noted. And in the factory built systems, as we keep going through this, I'm going to share with you some of the problems that we have with the factory built systems that are out in the field today. So I told you a while ago about Robert K. Thurman, and his son's name was Robert D. Thurman. Well, Robert D. Thurman, and just like his father, grew up and became a mechanical engineer. When he went through his college days and was getting his degree, he actually wrote papers for places like MIT, very high-end universities. So when he graduated from college, he was offered a job at the Carrier Corporation for the lucrative pay at that time of $75 a week. But anyway, Robert D. Thurman decided that he would go to work for his father in the business. But in 1957, right when UL would remove this listing, Robert K. Thurman passed away. At the same time that UL was changing the listing and clearance requirements on the fireplaces that he had invented in 1952. You see, these fireplaces were very radical. And what they did when you went to the factory built fireplaces, all of a sudden, you didn't have to have a foundation for it. These fireplaces could be installed right on a combustible floor. So Robert D. Thurman had to go back and retest the fireplace at that time. And when he did, they had to come up and they had to start adding things to the fireplace. Notably was the chimney, and Mr. Thurman developed a chimney system where the inner liner was made out of stainless steel. This is the part that the smoke passes through. Now, this is a 3-wall chimney. So then there was a metal liner between these that the air was passing through, and I'm going to show you these chimneys in just a minute. And then on the outside, there was an outer pipe, and this was going to be made out of galvanized metal. So we had 3 different types of metal in this chimney system. Also, Robert D. Thurman added what was called refractory panels, which are panels that go in the back wall and the side walls and the floor of the fireplace that are made out of a cast refractory material. And what does refractory mean? Refractory means it is a very high temperature application. In other words, these boards are made to be in extremely hot conditions. So instead of using brick inside of these fireplaces, what they went with was the refractory panels. And you're going to commonly see that in today's fireplaces, the refractory panels are still used today. Now, this is some pages out of a brochure for the Thurman fireplace. And if you look on there, if you can read on the screen, it says the following: frame the opening, preparatory to installing a majestic Thurman fireplace. The UL approved unit that has built-in clearances permitting it to be butted against combustible surrounds. And this is the older fireplaces that did not require clearance to combustibles. Again, that was changed later in the 1950s and 1958 when Mr. Thullman relisted his fireplace. And you'll see that it references Majestic in here. Majestic was a company that made incinerators and other parts of fireplaces at that time. For what Mr. Thullman did, Mr. Thullman sold a license for his Thullman fireplace, where Majestic started producing the factory-built fireplaces under their brand. And today we've had numerous companies that have produced these fireplaces: Hedelator, Preway, Majestic. There's been a number of these different operations out here producing fireplaces. Superior is another one. We've also had Lennox that's made these fireplaces. We have IHP fireplaces. We have a lot of different fireplaces that have been on the market. And one of the problems is the fireplace industry is one that many times we have acquisitions where one company will buy another company. And in some cases, such as Preway, the company just went out of existence. So what this has left us in the fireplace industry is a real big challenge, because we cannot get the original parts for these fireplaces. And as we go forth in this program, I'm going to show you why this could be a real potential hazard for a consumer. You see, the early Majestic Thullman fireplace, remember, these units are put on a combustible floor, and the clearance to wood is 1 to 2 inches away, depending on what part that we're talking about. So how did they cool these fireplaces? Well, one of the common ways of cooling it back in the 1950s was where we used what's called a thermosiphon system. So with the thermosiphon system, what do we have is we have a chimney system where the air is pulled down through the chimney cap, goes down that outer wall of the chimney, goes all the way down to the fireplace. That cooling air from outside goes around the fireplace, and then it cycles back up the inner liner, which is the inside wall and the middle wall. So we have the air coming down, goes around the fireplace, and goes back up. And that is called a thermosiphon system. And on this, you've got to have a chimney cap that allows this thermosiphoning action to happen. And if we block this airflow off, what can happen is we can then overheat that fireplace, overheat that chimney, that after a period of time, we're going to overheat these framing members. The framing members go through a process we call pyrolysis, or it's called vaporization. And what's happening in the pyrolysis, the vaporization stages, is the ignition temperature of the framing materials gets lower and lower till eventually it can ignite. This is why a lot of times you're going to find your chimney sweep, your inspector of your chimney, is going to have concerns because of the improper clearances to combustibles that exist with your fireplace. No matter if it's a fireplace that's made out of masonry, brick, and stone, or it's made out of metal and is a factory-built unit. This can be a real safety issue, and that's one of the things that your technician, your inspector is doing, is looking for any potential issues that may exist in your chimney when they do the inspection. But again, this is the thermosiphon action, where the air is pulled down that outer wall, goes all the way down, goes around the fireplace, and then cycles back up. Now, not every chimney works on the thermosiphon principles, because some will have what's called a packed pipe insulation. Some will be only air insulated with the chimney system itself. All these different manufacturers came up with different ways, different cooling methods for their fireplaces, and it continuously changes. This is why your technician may have to do research and find the actual manual and the installation guides for your fireplace. And some of these, like I said, are very difficult to locate because there's probably hundreds of different models of fireplaces that have been produced that have their own specific requirements for installation and for cooling. Now, like I said earlier, the factory-built fireplace that goes into a combustible wall was introduced into the United States in 1952 when Mr. Thullman started producing his units, later made by Majestic, made by Preway, made by Superior, made by a lot of different companies. FMI is another one. And what has happened over the past time frame since the early 1950s is, in the 1952, just about every fireplace was built out of brick, stone, mortar. But the use of the factory-built fireplace has risen dramatically over the years. And what we're also seeing is fireplaces have also changed to where the fuels changed. Gas is now a big part of the fireplace industry in America. And many times, if you look at newer home developments, you're going to find there are no wood-burning fireplaces in there. We also have emission concerns. So what we've seen is that we've seen this use of fireplaces and the selection of fireplaces since 1952 has changed dramatically to where now probably 95 to 98% or possibly more of the new fireplaces that are installed in homes today are going to be what we're talking about here, which is a factory built fireplace. Now, on the table in front of you right now, this is showing you the homes built in America based on the census data through the year 2009, 2010. And it's breaking it down at some periods here. You're going to see it in 5-year increments, and then you're going to see it in 10-year increments, depending on what's there. Now, since 1950, and when I did the research for this, there had been homes built of 90,809,000 in that time. And how many of these have fireplaces? Probably a good 60 to 75% have a fireplace of some type, because fireplaces are a very in-demand product for most new homes. Most people, when they buy a home, they want one fireplace, and many times they want more than one fireplace. Many homes will have multiple fireplaces in them today. But over this period of time from 1950, the use of the factory-built system has increased dramatically, while the use of masonry for the actual construction material has dropped drastically. Now, let me clarify this also. You may have a brick chase, which looks like a chimney, but it actually has a factory-built system inside of there, depending on the kind of type of the part of the country you live in. Different geographic areas have different building styles and what they use when it comes to the fireplaces. But this is showing you how the fireplace industry has changed dramatically since 1952. You're looking at 3 different types of chimney systems on the screen right now. One type is, you're looking there, is a triple wall air insulated chimney. This could be 2 different types. It could be the thermosiphon like I showed you a while ago. You also have other chimneys that just have a dead airspace that the air doesn't move between it. But this is an air insulated chimney. Immediately above that, you're going to find a chimney system that has insulation between the inner and the outer wall. This is the type chimney that the early heat-elator factory-built fireplaces used and others. And on the right-hand side, we have the double wall air insulated. And on this type, the air is pulled into the pipe outer wall through a collar on top of the fireplace, where the cooling air goes up and rises up through the chimney. Now, here's one of the issues with fireplaces. The chimney system must match the needs of that fireplace. In other words, we can't just go out, and when we have a damaged chimney, we cannot just go randomly selecting any chimney. The chimney on the factory-built fireplace must be designed for, tested with, and listed for that fireplace. So this is one of the big challenges, because possibly the fireplace you have in your home, if it needs parts such as replacement chimney pipe or even a chimney cap, sometimes these aren't available. So what we often have to do, because we can't find the parts or the fireplace is deteriorated, we have to go through what we call a retrofit installation, where we remove the existing fireplace and we put a new fireplace and a new chimney system in. The thing about the factory built fireplace, it is not going to last you forever. A factory built fireplace does have a lifespan. It's only going to be able to give you so many years of service. What's going to shorten those years of service? A lack of maintenance is one. Letting creosote build up, not having the chimney swept, and where the creosote, which is an acid, eats up the metal components prematurely. The bigger issue is water entry. Many times we have chimney systems that are not watertight, so the water gets into the interior of the system. And from this, we could be having mold, mildew, premature rot. If you watched the last episode of this, I showed you some pictures of chases that were rotting on the house. And the chase is the fake chimney that houses this factory built chimney. It looks like a chimney per se, but usually it's going to be covered with a non-fireplace traditional material such as siding, could be hardy board siding, vinyl siding, aluminum siding, could be plank siding. You'll also find these that do have brick chases that actually disguise them and hide them there also. But these are the various chimney systems that we're talking about. And these are some diagrams of the way that the fireplace system and the chimney is installed in the house. On the left-hand photo, what you're looking at is where we have a roof flashing, where the pipe comes through the roof, and we simply have a roof flashing that drives it in at that point. On the right-hand side, what you're looking at is what we call a chase installation. So on a chase installation, what we have is we have a housing, which is a fake chimney to hide the pipe, which is also commonly done on many houses. Now, if you look at the center of the system there, you're finding that's showing you how the wall behind the sheetrock in your home, how it is framed up. Notice that right on top of the fireplace, we have what's called standoffs. And the standoffs are where the clearance is obtained to the header that goes directly across the top of the fireplace. Also, on these fireplaces, there's a requirement for what we call a spark strip. And the spark strip goes under the front of the fireplace. And the reason for the spark strip is if any ashes were to fall out of the fireplace and could reach the floor, they're not going to be able to ignite the floor under the fireplace. So you're seeing the way, these are kind of like x-ray views of this installation, looking through the walls, those kind of things. So hopefully this will give you some help in determining what's behind those walls. And this is what we see on many modern homes today. What we find is we have a chase, and the chase is that fake housing that contains that chimney pipe. Now, on the left, you're looking at a picture of a chase that's mounted on the roof where the pipe is coming through and comes through a chase cover. The other photo to the right is you're seeing a chase that's built on the outside wall of the home, and it's resembling a chimney. Now, these chases could be finished with any type of outdoor rated material. Like the one on the left, it appears to be a stucco chase. The one on the right, here we're using siding. Again, this could be brick, this could be stone, this could be vinyl siding, it could be aluminum siding, it could be hardy plank, any different type of materials. These chases are built out of conventional framing materials, and they are put up for aesthetic appeal of the fireplace is why we use these. So we go back here. So anyway, what we've gone through the night on the night show has been about fireplaces, how fireplaces have become factory built over the years, and some of the things that are involved with them. Like I shared with Theodora, what you need to do is your fireplace, your chimney system should be inspected on an annual basis. I recommend you look for a certified technician in your market area to do this. I also recommend you look at their reviews on Google, see how they're taking care of their customers, see if they got good reviews and recommending them with that kind of stuff. Don't necessarily go with the lowest lowest cost. Go with the company that you feel confident that will do the best job for you. That's going to be your best move as a homeowner. And if they come in, they recommend that things be done. Possibly it's going to be that you have water entry issues. And this is a big factor on so many chimneys today. Water is probably the number one problem that exists with chimneys. And Ed, I appreciate you saying that, sure. Appreciate you allowing me to share this. Hope you're sharing this on your social page, Ed. So thanks for joining me. So anyway, tonight's show has been about the factory-built fireplace. And our purpose, our goal was to share with you about these units. If you go back and view last week's episode, which you can see on the Facebook pages you're watching, you can also go to my website, cvcsuccessgroup.com, and on there we actually keep all of our past episodes that we've done. We've been doing the Fireplace Show for about a year now, so we've got a lot of different shows we've done. Many of them have experts in the industry have joined me on those shows. So I appreciate you joining me tonight. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope it answers some of the questions and helps you in your home maintenance. My name is Jerry Isenhour. My company is CVC Success Group, and our purpose, our mission in doing this broadcast is to help you, the consumers of America, in understanding more about your chimney, your fireplace, and how to make it perform the best it can with the least amount of maintenance issues. If I can answer any questions for you, reach out to me. My email address is on the screen right now. It is jerry@cvcsuccessgroup.com. Send me a question. I'll probably answer it on a future episode. Watch for our next episode that's coming out, because our subject matter next time is going to be the masonry factory built units that have come into popularity in the last couple decades that are also installed in many new homes today. So we'll be talking about these where they originated from Denmark and were imported into America, and now they are used in a lot of homes across America, and several different manufacturers make these today. So again, hope you enjoyed this. Hope this time was of value to you. Feel free to tune us in on future episodes, and please feel free to share this on your own social channels. That's what it's all about, because we're simply trying to get the word out about fireplace and chimney safety. See you next time on the next episode of The Fireplace Show.